Thank you for listening to the BjjBrick Podcast. We'll be bringing you Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and good times. We hope to help you get the most out of your grappling ability and meet your goals both on and off the mat.
Welcome back, my friends, to the BjjBrick Podcast. This is episode 351, and I'm here with my good buddies Byron and Gary, and I think we're just shooting the breeze here for about an hour today. We're going to talk about lessons we've learned in life and maybe how they've helped us learn lessons on the mat as well. Byron, tell us a little bit about this episode and what we can expect.
Well, this has been a staple of the show for a while here. I don't keep track of how long we do things, but over a year easily, I would say, that we'll share a little snippet from Off the Mat Live and then say, well, because I learned that, I now do this on the mat. Or it could be vice versa. I learned this on the mat. I learned how to, how breaking down the arm bar into a bunch of little different chunks. And now when I'm learning how to fix my lawnmower, I just break it into little chunks. And it makes more sense. So just little things that we've learned, and that's not going to be mine. That sounded terrible. I just made that up on the fly. But just things that we've learned off the mat or on the mat and how we've brought that into their other lives. That's been one of my favorite questions to ask people when I interview them. If I get somebody on here who is specializes in a certain area of life that's not jiu-jitsu, I will often say, how does that translate? Or have you learned something from that field that you brought back over to jiu-jitsu? And I think it's basically yes every time. And then they have an interesting angle to jiu-jitsu that I've never heard before.
I like that, Byron. It kind of reminds me of Cal Ripken Jr. I know we're talking about life lessons, but, I know if you guys follow baseball, Cal Ripken Jr. held the streak for most games played consecutively. He played 2,632 games. What the heck is that?
It sounds like Joe playing guitar.
Oh, sorry. I didn't realize the mic was still on.
I was like, what the heck is that?
He's bored enough to where he's doing something else while we're podcasting.
Joe's causing a little distraction here, but don't worry, I'm stubborn and I'll get through it. But just talking about Cal Ripken Jr., life lesson for jiu-jitsu. And, one thing I always talk about when I started jiu-jitsu.
I can't hear any of you. Damn it.
Okay, I'm going to call this right now. These gentlemen are trying to play a joke on me. And I do applaud the effort, but it's I've got to get figured out. So let's see where this goes.
Now my Cal Ripken story is just destroyed.
No, I know Cal Ripken. He was a golf guy. Gary, hang in there with the Cal Ripken. I'm interested to see about how he had the record for the most games played of golf.
Wrong.
What was it?
Basketball.
Basketball, of course.
Basketball.
The Ripkens.
Yeah, Byron knows the sports. But, after I've been so rudely interrupted twice there by Byron.
By me, it was Joe.
You're playing a joke on Joe. You cut him off. So,
that's true.
Don't blame it on Joe. But, I'm stubborn. I'll get back into it. But the quote of the week is from Cal Ripken Jr. Stubbornness usually is considered a negative, but I think that trait has been a positive for me. And, you go back to Cal Ripken Jr., he probably played through a lot of aches and pains. He's just a tough guy. He's an Iron Man. You ain't going to keep him out. And, I think this relates to jiu-jitsu. I think it related to me in jiu-jitsu. I can tell you when I started jiu-jitsu, I just got destroyed all the time. And me, there are people who quit if they get tapped out all the time. But for me, it was stubbornness. I remember training with Jason Bircher, who's been on the show before, and I just couldn't believe what Jason could do. And due to my stubbornness, there was no way I was going to quit. One day I wanted to get to where Jason Bircher was that point of time. The first time I trained with him, I wanted to get like that. Stubbornness, I think, is a good trait to have in jiu-jitsu, just like Cal used it as a good trait to have in baseball.
Gary, I love Cal Ripken Jr. What is that? We're going to have a jam session here before too long.
I think we're in the deliverance area right now.
No, I love Cal Ripken Jr. And the thing I like most about him is there's two little things that I've seen floating around gyms all my life. And one of them is a little sign that's like, it's 10 things that don't cost anything or everybody can have or something. And, it's work effort and attitude and, be on time and those kind of things. And the other one is that, the best ability to have is availability. And those are two things that I think Cal Ripken really demonstrated. I mean, he just
awesome.
He worked hard every day. He was available every day. He wasn't worried about being the star of the game. He just showed up to work, and he did it day after day after day. And, man, you'll get better at jiu-jitsu if you approach that the same way that Cal Ripken approached baseball.
I like that, Joe. How did you say that? The best – or what was that about availability?
The best ability that you can have is availability. Yeah, I mean, it's good to be able to jump high and run fast and swing the bat hard. Those are all good abilities, but to be available day after day after day.
I love that, Joe. I've got this guy who worked for me for 15 years. He retired here a couple of years ago. The guy showed up every morning, 8 o'clock, like clockwork, left at 5 o'clock. He would never get there a minute early, never stay a minute late, never took a sick day the whole time he was there. He told me he had like over 30 years, worked at Bank of America before that, had over 30 years without a sick day. But when you have a team, which, I know you do at work, and I know you do there at work too, Byron, man, when you have a guy that you can count on, that is going to be there every single day, unless he had scheduled a vacation, it makes, predictability. It makes your team that much better. You're never scrambling from behind. You're always know where you're going to be when you have a guy like Cal Ripken or my former co-worker, Dennis Stokes, on your team.
I'm inspired by Cal Ripken and his consistency. Hey, Gary, here's the fun fact about me. When I was in school, back when I was just little Byron in grade school, the only award I would ever get was perfect attendance.
Awesome. No, but to be honest, that's awesome. You're doing the same things every day. You're getting up on time. You have a pattern. You have habits. You're getting there. You're staying healthy. You're eating well. You're getting good rest. And, those are good things that are going to make you good on the mat. And that's probably one reason you have succeeded on the mat. Just like Cal Ripken succeeded, on the baseball field, why the Orioles were always so good when you got a guy like that. But like Joe said, he didn't have the best talent. He didn't hit 330 every year and drive in 30 home runs, but you knew he was going to be there every day. Just a very, very good baseball player, but a very, very dependable baseball player.
Well, baseball is a whole different game that we usually talk about with jiu-jitsu. But I have a audiobook called 6 Games for BJJ, which are also different games than what you would think about with typical jiu-jitsu. In these games, I invite you to alter the way you're training jiu-jitsu, and you'll find new things about your own game that you didn't even wouldn't have considered or wouldn't have thought of on your own. But while you're rolling and training and positional sparring, some things will come up that'll be a little different for you, and they'll be framed in a different way, and it's a fun way to learn jiu-jitsu. So it's 6 Games for BJJ. It's a little over an hour long. The money supports the podcast here, and there'll be a link in the show notes to the BjjBrick shop. We can find this audiobook in there. It's $5.99. We do appreciate you guys checking it out.
The cool thing about that, like you said, Byron, 6 games for BJJ. Games. Let's have some fun. But it was kind of cool. I know Byron was talking about it before the show got on, but we had one of our listeners talk about how they use those games, but not for jiu-jitsu. We always talk about dragging stuff off the mat and back on the mat. But I don't know if you guys have ever heard of Super Dave Osborne, but he really used the game Ragdoll. That was probably one of his favorites. And he said it really helped him out a lot. And, he said he owed a lot to Byron.
Oh, yeah, he always would say that.
Yep. Hey, Byron, is the BjjBrick store still open? Is it considered essential?
It is. It's most definitely essential, or it's a type of business that doesn't require contact, and it's good to go.
Okay.
Yeah, the store is open for business. You could still featured prominently in the store are bricks from Gary's house.
We don't have a so-called brick and mortar store. It's a virtual store.
I like it. It's a virtual BjjBrick store. Are you sick and tired of your headphones not fitting around your cauliflower ears? Never again, my friends, will you need to take your phone calls on speakerphone. We are introducing ColleTunes, the world's first headphone designed to fit around your ridiculously big cauliflower ears. I never thought that when I started to do jiu-jitsu that I would end up not being able to wear my headphones. I mean, I tried to use a chip clip to clip the headphones to my ears, but my chips went stale. ColleTunes comes in a multitude of colors, including clear. If you want to show off those beautiful cauliflower ears, we'll still let you do that. Oh, that's nice. I probably will get those clear ones. If you want to listen to some sweet tunes and your ears are too cauliflowered up for headphones, well, you better buy a speaker. Because not only are the ColleTunes not supporting the BjjBrick Podcast, they're not even real. The BjjBrick Podcast is supported by the listeners just like you. Please check out our Patreon page in the show notes to support the show. Man, you're telling me ColleTunes isn't even real? I'm going to have to get that 80s boombox and hold it up on my shoulder like I did earlier. Well, guys, I guess we can get to work on the main topic of the podcast this week is our off-the-mat lessons. And it'll be interesting. We've had some time to think about these, and I don't know if anybody did.
I think that was directed towards me, probably.
Well, Joe has the ability to tell a really good story and then pull an even better life lesson from that story. So I'm sure Joe's going to do great with whatever he brings. Gary, you tell good stories and you pull good lessons, and oftentimes Joe will pull a better lesson out of your own story than you will. But you do take some, like, you have to have an idea first. Like, hey, tell me one about, back in repo and cars. You had stories for days about that. But without that, you're like, I don't know what to talk about. Gary, maybe you have one or a couple about old cars breaking down and leaving you stranded, or maybe something from your college days. I don't know what it's going to be.
Let's don't go back to those days. I might get arrested.
That might be the case, but that sounds like a good story, Gary, and some lessons we could all learn from. So, anybody wanting to go first on this thing here?
Well, this happened to me the other day, and I thought it was a great way to drag it back on the mat and see some possibilities for it. Basically, one thing in my business, I deal with a lot of outside vendors, dealerships, all sorts of, technology companies. And, sometimes I deal with them all the time. And you wonder sometimes how your company can get better. And, one of the best ways, something that we've done a lot is we'll survey our vendors, survey our dealerships, survey our vending partners, technology partners, and find out, if they have any ideas, how we're performing. And, it made me start thinking, because we just had one with one of our big suppliers here not too long ago, basically a 360 review of us by that company. And, I started thinking about it. That might not be a bad thing, to do for our jiu-jitsu. We train jiu-jitsu all the time. A lot of times, maybe the only feedback we get is from our coach. Kind of got me thinking that, when I roll, I could sit there and talk to all my training partners. If I go to a tournament, I could wait till the tournament's over, before it's over, and talk to some of my competitors, get some ideas of, hey, what did I do good? What did I do wrong? What could I do better? Is there something you could help me with? Training partners, open mats, just a bunch of different ways to get feedback from different people. A lot of times if you just get feedback from one person, say your coach, your coach sees one thing. He may not roll. Byron and I, our first coach, did not roll very often. So he's seeing feedback, by watching, which I think feedback by actually participating can be a big difference too. Sometimes you miss little things. And, I just thought that would be a good idea. Just survey my training partners, my competitors, people at open mats, people at different gyms, and see if they had any good ideas that could help me get better.
That's nice, Gary. I've always found that people are really willing to interact and give you feedback if you ask them specific questions. So anytime somebody has me in a good submission or something, whether they finish it or not, I'll try and follow up with them afterwards and ask them about the setup or, a detail that I caught that was new or something. And I think you can learn a lot by asking people about what they're good at.
And that's a strange thing that's unique to jiu-jitsu is, I don't see as much camaraderie in other sports as I do in jiu-jitsu. But, I can honestly say I have never asked one person for advice or how to do a move or help that in jiu-jitsu hasn't been there. And, some of these people may not be my best friends, but jiu-jitsu, that camaraderie is different. And even if you're a competitor, I mean, you see it all the time in the tournaments. You lose to a guy, all of a sudden he becomes your best friend. He's your Facebook buddy, and he's gonna, he'll give you some advice, how to get better or what you did really well.
So Gary, since I know you play basketball, imagine if young guy comes and he's playing pickup with you and your group, and he asks somebody after one of the games, "How do you keep blowing by me?" You think the guy's going to say, "Well, it's in my shoulder fake. When I do this, you look that way, and that allows me to get by you." You think the guy's not going to do that? He's going to be, buddy, I'm just going to keep blowing by you. But in jiu-jitsu, it's unique. People are willing. Like if I keep getting you in a submission, and I give you the key to defending it, I just gave up that opportunity to submit you every time. And in a lot of sports, people aren't willing to do that. But jiu-jitsu is unique.
Yeah, it's like a sport I never did play before 18 years ago, but I've never seen that in any of the sports I played really until I came to this sport. And it's, very unique in that situation.
Yeah, and I'm reminded of the whole basketball thing, no one's ever asked me about how I throw up so many great bricks all the time. And they don't.
Have you ever played basketball?
Have I played basketball, Gary? A guy like me.
Seriously.
I've shot the hoops a couple times, Gary. I've double dribbled a few times, I could say, proudly. But so, Gary, on yours, I was thinking, the idea of a 360 review or just an overall review of how someone's doing. I was reminded of Jake Fox and Fox Fitness, where I train, that they do I think it's at the end of the year. They ask for you to review them or do a survey and what can we do better? Awesome. What do you guys want to do less of? What do you want to do more of? Like really open. Like what about my teaching style do you like or not like? And all these things. And the thing is, he then adjusts what he does because of those. And it's just like that's really smart. I can go teach. I don't have a gym, but if I did, I can go teach these classes all the time and maybe I do something that just drives everybody just crazy. It's just not productive. It just totally is not what they want to do. Maybe they don't want to do like a real crazy warm-up. And they get survey back. Nobody likes the warm-ups. They just want to stretch, get loosened up, and then start training. And I do warm-up for it exceeds an hour. You don't know these things unless you ask people. And typically day-to-day, I'm not giving somebody real feedback like, Jake, that warm-up was too long. Or you talked a lot during your technique portion. You showed technique for 2 minutes, but you talked for 10. That's not the type of feedback you give somebody. It just in a normal base. But if I had to write something down, I might say something. Jake, you do this, and then you watch him. He'll make adjustments, and he wants to be the best coach he can. And it's just it's good. He does both. He asks for the feedback, and then he reacts to it. And they made changes to their schedule. They made changes to the teaching methods. They made different classes. Lots of different adjustments based on the feedback they've gotten.
Well, the key is, like you said, making adjustments. You have to be able to put your ego down because you may hear some stuff you don't want to hear. And, that's why he's so successful. You do an analysis, you find out what your strengths, your opportunities, your weaknesses, and your threats are. And you are going to hear stuff you don't like. But if you want to get better, per se at jiu-jitsu, per se at banking, per se at running a jiu-jitsu gym, you have to be able to hear the hard stuff. You have to be able to hear that criticism. You don't want to just hear all the good stuff, because we're doing stuff that bugs people, kind of like what you said there, Byron.
Yeah, and you might do something that you think is a good thing. Maybe, I don't have a clue what's happening in the banking world with Gary, but let's just say Gary shows up 20 minutes early to every appointment he has. And the feedback is, Gary, you drive me crazy because I'm not ready for you at that time. Show up 2 minutes early, or 5 minutes, but 20 minutes, Gary, you're messing up the meeting I had before that, or something. Like, here Gary was, this isn't a real thing, but like thinking I'm doing a great job. I'm going to show up extra early for this person. And it's really a negative. Like, you don't know these things unless you ask.
You talked about the long warm-ups, and, I can think back in the day when I first started, we had some pretty long warm-ups, and I can tell you that the one thing that always bugged me, because I've always liked to go to the gym and I can do my running and, push-ups and sit-ups there, that when I come to jiu-jitsu, we only had 2 days a week back then. I just wanted to learn and then spar. And, when we were cutting into 30 minutes of calisthenics, that was something I didn't like, but I never really had the opportunity. I mean, I could have said it to the coach, but, I wasn't really that kind of guy. But it could have been one of the reasons I left. It could have been a reason to lose some training partners.
It's almost like if you would have said, Coach, I don't like these warm-ups. They're really hard and they're long, and I do this type of thing on my other days I don't get to train here. That wasn't asked for, the feedback. So now you have a student who we were very new, critiquing somebody who's been coaching for quite a while. Like, you're kind of out of your place. But if the coach asks, hey guys, what would you change about if you change one thing, what would it be? And 90% say shorter warm-ups. That's valuable information to have.
Yeah, it's great information, and I think that's why Jake runs such a successful business. Fox Fitness does really well, and I think that's probably a big reason for it. He's getting feedback from his customers, and he's making changes to accommodate them and make everybody a little bit happier.
Yeah.
So great job.
Let me ask you this, Gary. Have you ever gotten feedback in the business world that was like you didn't like it at first, but ultimately it was really good feedback?
I've had that a lot, and you just have to sometimes you may not like it right off the bat, but you just got to let it sink in. Keep your mind open, and then you'll see. Maybe I can get better at that. But I just got a quick funny story.
That's what the whole episode's about, is share a little bit of story, and we'll talk about it.
My boss got promoted. He'd been my boss for 15 years. He's now the president of the company about a year ago. And so I didn't necessarily have a boss for a while. I wasn't really reporting to anybody, which I don't mind at all. But then all of a sudden they brought in a guy to become my boss. And he had been my boss for a total of about a week. And it came time for year-end review. And so I kind of figured the old president or the new president would give me my review. But it was another guy who gave me the review, not even my new boss. And, I was like, okay, no biggie. I don't care. I know I'm doing well. Well, at least I thought I was doing well. And the review was great. But there was just one thing that really got to me, and it said I didn't take the change very well. And it's funny because my boss is very technologically driven, and he used to always tell me, he's like, man, you are very open to change. And I'd hear that all the time. And, so I was kind of stunned. And the guy giving me the review is another guy that he's kind of like our change agent. He's always, looking for efficiencies, and a lot of it deals with my department. And I just told him, do whatever he wants to do. I have no problems, and so I was just kind of stunned on that. So I remember I asked him, I was like, I don't get this. Where did this come from? I think I'm pretty open to change. And he's like, well, I do too. And it was just silent for a second. And I was like, well, then where did this come from? And he's like, well, your new boss wrote that. And I was like, you've got to be freaking kidding me, And see, that's when it goes the wrong way. You got somebody who doesn't know you writing something, and that feedback really actually kind of made me mad. And I was like, well, to be honest, I don't want to sign this thing. And if he has the guts to write it, he can come over and talk to me about it. And so I just made them do it again. But, yeah, I thought that was just weird.
It's interesting to have feedback from somebody who doesn't know you. And that example, I immediately thought of.
He doesn't even know me. He has a whole nother person give it to me.
Yeah.
So that's the wrong way to doing that. And I did ask him, and I have a good relationship with him to this day. But I did ask him, I was like, where did that come from? And he's like, well, I've seen you in some meetings, and you seem kind of mad and mean sometimes. And he's like, I just thought you've been a little bit older, and most older people are hesitant to change. It's like, you've got to be freaking kidding.
Hey, Gary, I got to ask you a quick question though.
Yeah.
In your current position, are you tasked with evaluating people on a regular basis?
Yes. Yep.
And how do you do it? I mean, if you're like, for instance, if part of your evaluation is a 1 to 5, do you give everybody 5s if they're really good?
No, well, there's a whole bunch of stuff I evaluate, but before I evaluate, I always have them evaluate themselves too.
Okay.
I like to see where they think they're coming from, and I think that has been one of the biggest differences that have made my evaluations reviews of people that work with me made it easier. I kind of see where they're coming from, and I don't know, it just. Sometimes I think they're way off, compared to what I see. But then that's something we need to talk about. Why do you see yourself like this, and I see myself like this? And I tell you, just by having some of those conversations before the review, we put in a lot of time beforehand, I find out stuff that I didn't know. There's always these little things, the way somebody's doing something, but I don't see it. And, sometimes when they've talked to me, it's changed my mind. Sometimes when I've talked to them, it's changed their mind. So, it's, I don't know. I just think you have to have good information and be open, kind of like what we were talking about, on this life lesson, be open to criticism, but, it's got to be fair criticism.
Yep, I agree. I just know that, I'm tasked with auditing our vessels on a regular basis, and I often get pushback from the captains when I'm done. I'll find several findings that need to be addressed, and I'll get pushback, and I tell them nobody can run a perfect boat. I said, if I go on any boat in the fleet and I dig enough, I'm going to find some issues. I'm going to find some things I can be critical of. And so if I'm evaluating a person in the position they're working in, it's kind of the same thing. I'm not going to give anybody all 5s. I know that if I look close enough, I'm going to find some areas where you can improve. So
yeah. Yep. And that's good feedback to have. I mean, you may be a superstar. Let's just take LeBron James, superstar. But I guarantee
Gary, please. Not everybody knows. What you got to say the sport too.
Ping pong.
Byron, I think.
Come on,
yeah.
we all
ping pong.
know
Okay. Ping pong. LeBron James. Ping
knows
pong.
But you, Byron.
Okay.
Yeah.
Ping pong. Thank you, Joe. Appreciate it. So he's great with the paddle. Carry on, Gary. I was just confused.
No, but you take a superstar like LeBron James. I guarantee you, there's areas of his game he could work on.
Yep.
Maybe not. He's so good. No,
it's the
I'm
same
kidding.
thing for jiu-jitsu. We may not all be LeBron James level of ping pong players or grapplers, but even great grapplers could look at a win and find things they did wrong and find things they could do better. It's kind of like Joe. Nobody runs a perfect ship. Nobody has a perfect grappling game. There's always room for improvement. And it's up to you to find that sometimes, but keep getting better.
Yep. And if I'm giving somebody feedback, I always start with that. Like, you're doing a ton of things right, but what you asked for is feedback. So I looked, and here's a couple of things I can see that you could work on.
Is there
let
one?
me give you this binder of all the things you've done wrong.
Is there one or two things that almost always pops up on even a good ship captain will always struggle with, or is it all over the place?
It's all over the place.
Okay.
And actually, what it tends to be is the boats with the smoother operation oftentimes and the better morale and, all of that's very important. They're often the ones with the that are easiest to nitpick. They forgot to file this paperwork. They forgot to do this. They didn't make their deckhands do that. So it's almost one or the other. Either the captain and chief engineer are tyrants and you've got those kind of issues on the boat, or they're a little bit too relaxed.
That's interesting. I never really thought about critiquing the way a boat is ran.
Well, you think about it, it's a business, but then on top of that, man, major safety issues, out there in a boat. You need all the proper equipment. You need to, I don't know what all goes to it, but, I could just see, if you have a bunch of violations, that ship could be out there in the middle of the ocean in major trouble if a storm comes and put a bunch of people at risk.
Well, it's also a community. You got 8, 10, or 30 people living on the boat 24/7. And, yep, you're right. It's a big endeavor.
Yeah, yep.
All right, here, that's your first off the mat lesson. I can't wait to hear a second one.
Man.
Okay, I've got it right here.
Do you really?
I was thinking the other day, I was watching on Netflix one of the QB season 1 or 2 shows, and it's just it's a cool little show about high school quarterbacks that are getting ready to go into college. Some big time names like Jake Fromm, Vince Fields, have been shown on this Netflix documentary. But I thought it was cool, and it reminded me of talking to a jiu-jitsu guy. But one of these coaches was trying to give a little pep talk before the game to his team, and trying to say his team might be a little too cocky. But he was giving a story about there was a circus in town, and the circus is in town, and getting all set up, and the village was excited that the circus was here, and one of the clowns was already in his clown outfit and everything. He was all excited, and somehow a big fire. You should like this, Byron. Talking about fires, a big fire started at the circus, where the circus is going to be the fairgrounds, I guess. And so the head of the circus goes to the clown. He's like, "Hey, why don't you go to the village and warn everybody and tell them we need some help because I'm afraid we not be able to take this, be able to keep this fire under control. And then if it crosses the field, the village is going to burn down." So the clown, he's already in his clown outfit, clown makeup, and got his horns and everything, gets on his unicycle, just like Byron has in his garage, gets on his unicycle and rides into town and gets downtown there, and, everybody's out, and he starts, telling everybody, frantically and about what's going on, and they need their help. And, because he's a clown, dressed as a clown, acting like a clown, riding a unicycle, everybody thinks, all the townspeople think it's a performance, think that they're just trying to pump it up so more people will come, tomorrow, opening day, for the circus. And, he's just going on, and, nobody would help him out. And, what the moral of the story is, don't be a clown. Your actions speak louder than words. Don't say stuff. Don't, how people perceive you. And, it made me think jiu-jitsu. And, I know we're all out right now with COVID-19, not training. And by the time you listen to this, who knows, maybe people will be training because we record a couple weeks early. But about 4 or 5 months back, one of my training partners always talks about how he wants to get better. And we here in Wichita, Kansas, we're a very blue-collar city. We are what's called the air capital of the world, where so many planes are built. Boeing's been here, Spirit Aerosystems is here, Learjet's here, Textron's here, Beech Aircraft is here, Airbus is here. So we have a lot of blue-collar workers, and aircraft, is a cyclical business. And, so there are furloughs going on. So this guy, he tells me he's furloughed for, 4 weeks, and it turned into be a longer furlough. But he was telling me, he's like, "Man, this is the best thing in the world. I'm furloughed. I'm getting paid. But now I can spend the next 4 weeks training every day, constantly, not every day, but, training 4 or 5 days a week versus 1 to 2 that he trained before. And, I'm going to get so much better." And, the first week I heard that so many times. He trained probably 4 days a week that first week and, talking about it. Week 2 comes along. Skips one day, says he's building his deck. Next day we were going to train that week. Hey, same thing. He's building his deck. Skips. Next day that week, he skipped again. Showed up one day that week, showed up the next time, and it just kept going on for 3 or 4 weeks. But all I kept hearing out of his mouth was, hey, I'm going to train all this time. I'm going to get better. I'm going to do this. And, it's like, don't talk, do it. And, it makes me think back to, my jiu-jitsu career. I thought I had a pretty cool little shout out from one of our listeners one time. And, she was talking about how, she was scared to do jiu-jitsu at first, but she heard my little story about when I first started jiu-jitsu. And, I told my wife I was going to go try jiu-jitsu. It's something I've been wanting to do. And I'd been talking about it for, a couple of weeks beforehand. And, I go the first day and I got scared. I drove right by it. And, I was like, man, I'm going to get beat up. I think this is going to be like a lion's den initiation and I won't be able to do it. And, but I talked the big game, but I chickened out. But the next time the class came, I got my courage up and, told myself, just do it. And, walked in there and the rest is history. But, jiu-jitsu all the time. I hear people say they're going to train all the time. They're going to do this. They're going to do that. And, just follow your words. If you have a goal, if you're talking, just do it. And, it seems simple, but, I think at times I do that all the time. If I'm going to say something and tell it to people, I better follow through with it, or people are going to think I'm like that clown. They're not going to listen to me. They're going to look at me with not as much respect. And so, if you're not going to do something, don't talk about it. Be it. Don't wear the jiu-jitsu shirts. Train jiu-jitsu. And I was just watching that the other day, and it just made me think about all the people I've heard saying they're going to train jiu-jitsu. How many people have told me they're going to come and do jiu-jitsu with me? And I'm not putting anybody down for not doing jiu-jitsu, but if you don't want to do jiu-jitsu, just don't do it. Don't talk about it. And I don't know. That's kind of a rant, I guess, too. But
Gary, that's one of my big fears is that the guy with the deck, like, maybe he really wanted to do jiu-jitsu. He wasn't just saying that to make you think he was cool. Maybe he really wanted to, but after a week or two goes by, it's out of his habit, it's out of his routine, and he found something else. And now he's playing ultimate frisbee or ping pong with LeBron. Like, I don't know what he's doing, but he's not doing jiu-jitsu. But that's my biggest fear with this COVID-19 thing is, okay, everybody who trains has now lost the habit of training jiu-jitsu like 5 times a week, twice a week, every day, once a week, whatever your habit was, you've lost it. It's gone. And it might be kind of tricky to get that habit back. I think most of us are excited to go train, but you have to realize if you stop training for a while, your first day back, it'll be fun, but it's also going to be really hard. And that's the way all of my days back. If I have to take a week or two off or something like that happens, and I come back, it's like, man, I was pumped to get here, but now I'm rolling, and this guy's got mount. This is a hard sport. And it's just like...
Byron, does it have to be hard? And what I'm saying is, know your limitations.
Yeah.
When you come back, don't go crazy. I mean, your instructor's probably going to be in that same boat, But also, too, I can think of so many times of people I've trained with back in the day. And I can tell you, since I started 18 years ago, I have never taken more than a month off. And that was when I dislocated some ribs. But otherwise, I never really taken more than a week off, like if I go on vacation. And now when I go on vacation, I don't train anymore. I just go on vacation and let my body heal too. But I remember there would be people who haven't trained in 3 or 4 years, and all of a sudden they come back. And I always try to grab them first. And, man, we have the lightest roll possible. I'm not looking to tap them out. I'm not looking to push their pace. I'm looking to make sure they have a good time and that they can come back again. And, I think that's something that we need to tell ourselves because we are out of that habit. And, man, if you just come home all beat up and, puking and sore and, cranked knees. It's not going to do us any good.
See, Gary, I think the way that you approach that when you see somebody come back that's been off mats for a while, that's sort of a cultural shift, I think, in jiu-jitsu, and I think it's a good one. I think 8 or 10 years ago, it was more difficult to be that casual guy that only trains 6 or 7 times a month because it's like – yeah, it's like if you weren't ready to show up and go to war every time you walked in class – you just weren't going to ever really fit in or make it in jiu-jitsu. But I think it's easier now to come in and roll at a pace that suits you, and your training partners will work with you. And I think that's a good shift within the community.
Yeah. And I don't know how often you guys listen to Tom DeBlas. I know he's been on the show, but man, one thing that always sticks out that I see him say all the time is 99% of your students aren't competitors. They're guys with jobs who might want to train 1 day a week, and it could be either to lose weight, it could be for self-defense, it could be for social, settings, it could just be to get more flexible. But I think back in the day there weren't as many schools, and it was a lot more hardcore. But you look how successful Tom DeBlas's gym is, and you see him as a great competitor, and you see his buddies, Gary Tunin, Gordon Ryan, Nicky Ryan, and all those guys as great competitors, and you think he's a huge competition gym. But if you follow him, you'll see, he's got the wives, the husbands, the lawyers, the doctors, the ditch diggers, the tractor trailer drivers. He's got everybody, and he understands that not everybody wants a workout like that. Not everybody's going to get in the ring. Not everybody's going to compete, and the vast majority of them aren't in it for that reason.
Yeah, good point, Gary. Gary, you mentioned quite a bit about the clown story, and I'm going to just do a little competition between you two gentlemen here. I'm going to start off a joke.
Are we trying to see who the biggest clown is?
No, I guess ultimately so.
It would be me.
Okay, Gary, you want to go first or second?
Oh, I always go first.
Okay. How do you, Gary?
I don't know if he starts first, but he always finishes first.
Okay, Joe's already ahead. That was pretty good. Gary, your one question: how do you stop a clown from smiling?
The thing is, I'm not going to stop a clown from smiling.
That's wrong.
Smiling,
it's wrist locks, Gary. Wrist locks.
No, smiling just gets everybody in a better mood. See,
I would have also accepted a heel hook.
No, you're talking about violence.
The clowns that I know, they smile right through those wrist locks.
All right, Joe, you're up. For the potential, Joe, for the chance to win. If you're attacked by a group of clowns, what do you do?
I know.
Full guard.
Go for the juggler.
What do you do, Gary?
Go for the juggler.
Go for the juggler. That's right. So Gary with the steel, man.
Well, actually, I posted that on my Facebook page not too long ago.
Byron didn't think you'd remember.
With Gary, with material like that, the listeners are flocking to find your page. Oh, that was very nice. That's funny. No, you both post funny stuff all the time on your Facebook pages. Not me so much.
Byron, okay, here's your question.
Okay. Oh, man.
Who posts funnier stuff, Joe or I?
Who knows funnier stuff?
Facebook funnier stuff.
I have no idea. You both beat me.
He's afraid to review us, Joe.
Well, he doesn't want to say it, but it's that Shamani guy that's who he gets a kick out of.
Yeah, he would if he was in a competition, you both lose.
Yeah.
Well, that was some good off the mat lessons, Gary.
I'll see you guys next week.
Joe, you want to go next, or should I hop on?
I'll throw one out real quick. So something happened on Friday, and actually it happens on most Fridays. I got a message from Byron, a message to Joe and Gary. Are you guys free to record this weekend? And I said yes, and Gary said yes, and that was the last we heard until like this morning.
We didn't have it Saturday.
It's an ongoing joke at my house. Whenever I'm home, my wife's like, what you got going on this weekend? Well, I'm recording at some point. And, so we joke about that a lot. We also joke about when we do an article of the week that Gary and I never read it till 5 minutes before. But then on the other hand, Byron doesn't send us the notes until 10 minutes before. So, we joke about these things. But what I'm getting at it is if they really bothered me, like if it bothered me that Byron hit us up to record on Friday and then just flaked off on nailing down a time until the last minute, the first way to address that would be to talk to Byron about it. We joke about these things all the time. I got to make sure he understands that's an issue where we can't deal with it. If it bothers Byron that we're not reading the articles, he needs to send us to him early and say, hey, guys, I really appreciate if you read this before the show.
And maybe make them really interesting to you guys.
That would help too. But the first order of business is always communication. And the reason I wanted to bring this lesson is because in the 5 or 7 or 8 years I kind of been paying attention to the jiu-jitsu community and following different people online and stuff. You see questions that are asked over and over again, and they're along the lines of, a girl will call in or write in and say, there's a guy in class that seems like a nice guy, but he always asks me the weirdest questions or makes the weirdest comments before we roll, like, what kind of perfume are you wearing? Or I like that lip gloss, and it's just weird. How do I address this? Or somebody else will write in and say, I'm 48 years old, I weigh 160 pounds, and the other 3 white belts are killing me every class. How do I deal with this? Usually the first thing you want to do is talk to your coach. You got to communicate. You might want to talk to the individual too, but sometimes that's not appropriate. But talk to the coach. If you're getting beat up every class, or like Byron was talking about, you got a problem with the way the class is structured, talk to the coach and let him know.
Joe, that's funny you were talking about, hey, you guys free this weekend or Sunday. So, I checked before I went to bed last night to see if we had a time down. So then I set my alarm for 8:15 because a lot of times we do this at 8:30 in the morning. And, so I woke up and I don't have my glasses with me. So I couldn't even read. And I was too tired to get out of the bed. So I'm trying to read the darn thing and, I can't tell. So I think I put we recording or what time or whatever, and Byron had already put it at night, but I still couldn't see it. So once I realized that finally after I saw it, I was like, cool, I'm going back to bed. But so just as you said that, it was a funny story with me there too, trying to figure out what time we're recording.
I try to leave it open for you guys, but I think it probably would be easier if I said, hey, does this time work? And then yes or no. But I always assume maybe they're juggling things around, but maybe ironing it down to time earlier on would be better. But it doesn't help that 80% of our conversations over our chat thing are joking or teasing each other. But I don't know. The same thing with the example I gave that wasn't a real one. That Gary shows up to work super early, and it's driving everybody crazy. Like, Gary, it's too early to be here. Hey Byron, let's iron down a time sooner and not be so open. It's easier for me to pick my day out earlier versus later. I don't know. Maybe you guys care. Maybe you don't care that much. I don't know.
Yeah, but I think we're all different. Like, if you talk to my wife, I don't plan anything. I do everything by, just, hey, I want to do something now. I'm doing it now. I hate it when my wife wants to plan stuff. I hate it when we go on vacation and she pulls out, hey, here's where we're stopping the first night on our drive out there. It's like, that's ridiculous. What if we get there?
How is that bad, Gary? I don't understand how that's bad.
I know, right?
You don't need a place to stay your first night. Day one, you don't know what's going to happen.
Maybe I want to drive farther.
Oh, I see.
I don't. That's how I am. It's but my wife likes to plan, and I don't plan anything. And I'm surprised we're still together.
No, I think that those sort of things work out great because you need somebody to pick up your weak areas. If you
I don't have any weak areas.
In planning is your weak area, Gary. I'll tell you that right now.
Well, Gary, she planned on keeping you, and you haven't planned on leaving yet. So,
I guess you're right.
Oh, Joe, that's nice.
But Byron, I really don't care that we don't knock down the time. I just wanted to know if we were going at 8:30 or later. That was my big thing. So. I mean, but Joe, you're probably more of a planner, and it bugs Joe more. But me, I do everything off the seat of my pants.
Everything.
But Joe, I do like that. Like what you're talking about, that weird guy. It's ask questions. Don't be afraid to communicate. Communication is huge. I mean, not just in jiu-jitsu, but in relationships, as we just talked about, in business world, really everything. But communication is very key right there.
Yeah, and let's say you were paying your coach for private lessons. You decided that was a good thing. You had the money and you were going to take a private lesson a month. If 2 or 3 months into it, you weren't getting what you anticipated, you could keep just spending the money if you want, but it would be much easier to just have an open dialogue with him and say, here's what I thought we were going to do, and then work it out from there. Whatever the issue is, you can't go wrong with just having good open communications.
And Byron, you've taught me a lot about that communication, and I know Byron's now waiting for the joke to come, but this one's actually serious. But, I'll never forget one time I was like, hey, that guy's a jerk. He's beating up all the new people. I'm going to go roll with him and, tap him out real quick. And I'll never forget Byron's like, man, that's the worst possible thing you can do. Why don't you just go over and talk to him? And he may not know. And, I felt like so freaking small. I hate to say it, but that never even crossed my mind. But so now, I try to communicate and think before I act. So I never really thought about that. But like Byron says, told me that day, and it's great advice. But a lot of times, maybe somebody hasn't talked to him. Byron will talk to anybody. I've seen Byron tell people to put a shirt on if we're going to roll. I've seen Byron tell people, it's like, man, did you think about washing your shirt before we rolled? And I mean, those are hard things to say, but they're actually good things to say, because maybe that person will take Byron's advice and more people will roll with him and like that person better. Another example, we've got another really big guy who is just big, strong guy with terrible technique, but, he'll tap you out with can openers and headlocks and stuff like that. And, I've told Byron I won't roll with that guy anymore. And Byron's like, have you ever just talked to him? And it's like, no. And, I look at him and Byron roll, and they roll a lot different. And so he still has training partners, and a lot of that has to do with Byron. Well,
I knew the guy you're talking about. I told him on the first day, guys aren't going to want to train with you, because we rolled pretty hard for quite a while, and he's very physical, and I don't know what he weighs, but he's big, and he's not overweight like fat guys. And
let's put it this way: he was a football lineman.
Okay, that's kind of like LeBron James, probably, right?
Yeah,
like a ping pong lineman. I'm gonna keep working on this LeBron James angle. No, but I told him flat out. I said, because he was new there, and I said, guys are gonna not want to roll with you if all of your rolls are really hard and you play dominating positions the whole time. I said, I swept him. I think, I don't remember, I could be wrong, maybe once the entire first roll, and it was a no time roll. We rolled for until I think I said, I'm just done. Like,
your head fell off?
No, I don't. Well, maybe. But I think we just rolled for like 15 or 20 minutes. And I was like, I'm done. And I was not just done with him. I was done rolling because I was exhausted. And I said, it's going to be tough for you to come in here and get a lot of good rolls, because I want to roll with like 5 people at least today. And I rolled with 1. And I said, you're going to have to slow things down. You're going to have to play some guard positions. I swept him, and I got on top, and he worked from his guard within 30 seconds. He's bowling me back down to my back. I was like, oh, I can't believe it, man. I worked so hard to get there. But yeah, the conversations I think are important. And it is odd, but I'm decent at telling somebody that they kind of smell funky today. And I do like to blame, like Gary says, I like to blame the clothes. I like, man, your shirt's pretty ripe, man. Did you wash it? Yeah, I washed it. I think maybe it's time to just throw that shirt out, because I don't really want to roll right now. Like, I've had lots of those because nobody else does those conversations. It's easier to blame the clothes for stinking than them themselves. But if I think it's them, I'll say, man, you're a little bit funky. Did you shower before you came in? Or a softer way to do that is to mention that I've showered right before I showed up to work out. It seems weird to shower before I come exercise, but I know that this is a close contact sport where we spread corona like crazy, and I want to be at least smelling decent before I give you the virus.
I remember when you asked one of the guys, it's like, hey, did you mow your yard before you came? He's like, huh? And he's like, yeah, your shirt's kind of funky. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a good way to say it. Yeah.
We had one guy come in. He just got some massage and had all these weird oils on him. So not only did he smell funny, he was like really greasy. I was like, I'm like, what's on your skin? Oh, I got a massage. I tried. I'm like, I'm done, man. Because now I'm going to give this same massage rolls to everybody else I roll with now. I'm going to go wash my hands and call it good. But yeah, in the example, Gary, you mentioned that it made you felt like you were small or whatever. Like, it's not the intention. Everybody loves it when Gary's on the mat. Like, he's fun. He's very helpful, and not my intention to make Gary or anybody feel small. But that's the thing. When somebody's rolling too hard with people, and you go smash him, and or not you, but anybody goes, and that's typically the answer in jiu-jitsu. That's still, I think, the standard practice in jiu-jitsu is have an enforcer go beat them up. But then, so let's just say it was me. I'm decent. I've been training for a little while. I'm stronger than everybody. I go out and I start smashing all these new guys. It's pretty fun. And then I roll with Gary, and he just annihilates me. Well, that's what we do here. That's jiu-jitsu. Gary just enforced that jiu-jitsu is a rough sport, and if I can do something, I do that. But if you talk to the person and say, hey, you both should be getting something out of this training session. Your training partner should be getting a chance to do some techniques too. And I'm not seeing that out of what you're bringing. This isn't a fight. This is training. And just a short conversation can change the environment on the mat almost immediately.
You know, something I've found has helped recently with guys that are rolling rough, new guys, young guys, is explaining to them, talking about the consequences, the more long-term consequences. I had a guy that face choked me a couple times recently. Like, we're starting with him on my back, hooks in, seatbelt grip already. We're positional sparring. And, I mean, as soon as the coach says go, he's just on my face and – so we did that a couple times, and I told him I'm done. I'm not going to do it anymore. And I told him why, and I said it's not that I'm worried about. Oh, you just you get me to tap 2 or 3 times. I don't care about that. But I says, what you're doing, if you end up splitting my lip open and I've got to go in for stitches and I can't train for 5 or 6 weeks or 3 weeks or whatever, we're not going to be able to be friends after that. I was just kind of joking, but kind of explain to him, if you're neck cranking me, I'm not worried about if I have to tap right now. I don't mind tapping, but if you crank my neck to the point where it's tweaked and I can't train for a couple weeks, that's not going to be good.
Joe, funny story. Byron was talking about that big guy. That guy had my back one day, and he's going for a rear naked face choke. And, he had it on, and, for probably a good 30 seconds, and I went to tap, and finally I got out of it, and it was, straight on the mouth. And he's like, man, I can't believe you tapped. I was all over that. Or you didn't tap. I was all over that. And as I turn around, my whole face is blood. I put 2 teeth through my lip. And, came out the other side. And I was like, you really thought you were underneath my chin? And it's just, he didn't think he was under your chin.
He didn't care.
Yeah, he didn't care.
He was saying it was perfect. But, I mean, even today, after speaking with him, I still won't roll with him.
Yeah. So, Gary, I didn't know the story would end with you putting a hole through your lip. But I knew that you weren't going to tap to a choke like that. I guarantee I would have tapped. I tap when I'm uncomfortable for my neck.
You're smarter than me. That was stupidity of me, and I went home, put some glue on it, and that was it. But stupidity, that isn't smart. I should tap from that, but I don't get mad very often. But I get mad in situations like that, and I tell myself I tapped to that.
You wouldn't get so mad if you just tapped.
That's true.
Well,
It would prevent that.
And you can cultivate a good training partner. Here we are. I'm not picking on you, Gary.
Yeah.
Honest feedback.
No, but Byron will tell you I'm my own worst enemy. I don't.
You're way more stubborn and tough than I am. That's for sure on the mats. Like I'm not a tough guy on the mats.
You know, I don't take time off. I mean, I don't. I tell everybody to do the opposite of me. Really, when I'm rolling, I tell them don't be like me, or you're going to end up crippled like me.
Yep. So we've got, the master's kind of got everything is rested on his shoulders on the vessel, and by the time you get to be 45, 50 years old, you've been running boats for a while. You've sort of developed a way that you do it and some stories. And there's a small percentage of guys that a lot of their stories are, I ran this guy off, I had this engineer that sucked, and I told the crew coordinator, don't ever send this guy back. And like, I've got such high standards, I don't put up with bullshit. You come on the boat, you're not ready to do your job, you're going home. I don't care. And they take pride in having those super high standards and that it's my way or the highway attitude. And I strongly disagree with that. I think the master of the boat, part of your job is to take the crew that's been handed to you and make the best out of it. And it's sort of, I'm talking to you, Gary. It's sort of that way with training partners. It's sort of that way with training partners too. You get a room full of training partners. You can run half of them off, or you can try and make them all into a team. I'm out.
Well, no, Byron, I think will admit to this, that I'm probably I think I'm a pretty easy guy to train with.
Yeah.
I will let you tap me numerous times. If you're new, I don't get mad if I get tapped, except for if you're going to face choke me. But I do not believe that person can be helped. And Byron, I bet you don't roll with him anymore.
No, I positional spar with him, and it's enjoyable for a while. But I mean, it's just hard to roll. I mean, it's the same thing when the kids transitioning to the adult class. Sometimes it's hard to roll with some of the adults because they're so much bigger. He is way bigger. His arms are as big as my legs, and I don't have the tiny chicken legs either. But like, he's just a big person, and it's just hard for me to. I can't move him. I have to maneuver around him. But it's an interesting dynamic as far as, okay, let's start with me on your back. And I want to see, and he is very complimentary on my back system and working from his back. And a lot of times he'll escape, but it takes a little while. But he'll up on my back. And usually I can't get enough movement to get out of that. But like, it's just, yeah, I don't roll with him, but I don't mind positional sparring with him because it's a more clean training environment for that. But I don't fight him either. Like, that's not at all what we're doing. And he's happy to get those time because he'll come in, he'll stretch, he'll warm up, he'll stretch some more. I'll positional spar with him. He might roll with one other person, and he's looking at being done. Like, he doesn't want that. He enjoys hard training, but he doesn't get it a lot of times. But I mean, that's why I tried to push him to go to Fox, because they got a lot of big guys who would be able to push him better than what I can. But I don't know what his schedule's like or what he's wanting to do with his jiu-jitsu, but yeah, that's up to him. But I'm with Joe in that camp as far as the same thing in the fire department business. I'm not hiring people. I don't make those decisions. They hand you a rookie, and it's your job. It's my job to work with him to make him the best that he could be or she could be. And I've seen a lot of people complain that rookie sucks. You know, they're worthless. They can't do this or that. Well, how much did you work with them? What did you teach them? How did you correct their mistakes that they made? A lot of times it's not much. They don't do much with them. They just expect them to be great on their own. That doesn't happen.
Yeah, and I'll bet you, Byron, there are some firehouses where rookies just seem to do better at those houses than others. I know that on the boats, there's certain captains that have created a culture where people they fit in, they all strive for excellence together, and there's some boats that doesn't happen on. Yeah.
And I would hope that's the type of firehouse that I work in. It's hard to evaluate yourself in your own crew all the time, but I think we make pretty good rookies. So yeah, good one, Joe, as well, and tying that in with with rough guys on the mat. It's as we're telling you stories, you've listened to two black belts talk about somebody who ultimately is just too rough around the edges to have good rolls with. That's reality. Like if Gary's walking away with a bloody lip and upset with the guy, and I'm not training the guy, full rolls because it's just too brutal and it's not what I want to do. Like that's anybody then. Like that's okay if that's you and you just got your blue belt or your purple belt or your brown or black belt, and this guy doesn't care about your safety, or today's not the day for you. You don't feel like rolling that hard or whatever it is. That's a normal situation. And, Gary and I aren't world-class athletes, but we're pretty darn good at jiu-jitsu. I mean, I'm not trying to, we don't brag on the show, but we've been training since 2002, and I think we're getting better every year. But if there's people that they're like, no, thanks, not rolling with you today. I got another guy. So I'll roll with that guy, Gary. I got a guy that I won't roll with just because I feel he's extremely athletic, high-level wrestler, I don't know, 215 or so pounds. I feel like my safety my safety is the last priority in his mind. I'm not going to roll with him. If he didn't care about my safety, he could be the same size or smaller. I don't want to roll with somebody who doesn't care about my safety on the mat.
Yeah, that's how I am. I mean, I wasn't like that when I first started, but now I want somebody who cares about my safety. I got a job to go to. I need to bring in money to support my family, and I want to keep training. It's my favorite thing, favorite hobby in life to do. And if I can't train, I'd be miserable. But
I've had conversations with this guy, and it's just a different mentality. I think it comes from the wrestling mentality of if we're on the mats, we're competing. We're not. That's more of a wrestling thing. You're competing for a spot for varsity. And although I'm your teammate, I'm also your competition. And he just can't break that mentality. Once it's kind of like you see it more in striking sports. Gary and I are boxing, which is maybe only happened once or twice.
Which happens every day.
Gary hits me, I hit him. We're working our movement and stuff. And then suddenly I hit Gary a little bit harder than we'd been hitting. Kind of an accident. But then Gary comes over and hits me a little bit harder than that. Now I'm getting kind of pissed. And now I hit Gary harder than that. And now we're basically fighting with boxing gloves on and pretending that we're doing training. Like, that's sometimes the mentality of people. Like, I could start the roll with him, and for a minute or so it'd be good, and then I wrap up his head and try to do a submission with that. He's mad. It's like I punched him in the face. It's not what I'm here to do.
See, though, I never really felt those, and I know your nickname used to be Byron Pillow Hands Jabara when you were boxing.
Because I put you to sleep.
I always thought it was because your hands were soft like pillows.
Oh, yeah, that's true. A lot of times the feathers will just come out of somewhere when I'm getting hit. I don't know what's going on.
Let's skip past that one.
Do you ever get hit so hard milk comes out your nose?
No.
Comes out somewhere else, huh?
Yeah.
Joe, I don't want to cut you off here. Did you have anything else to bring in?
Well, no, but
I thought that was great, Joe.
That was great.
Because I personally think could be one of the biggest things is communication. And, Byron pointed it out to me that, I wasn't using communication in that point. And then you guys both, pointed out to me that, I could probably communicate better too. So, yeah.
I do like where you guys took that, though, when you're talking about the intensity of the roll. Byron, you're talking about the boxing and one hit's a little harder than the other. And I was going to ask you guys if you thought there's hardly anything more valuable in a training partner than their ability to match and control levels of intensity. I've seen, and you guys have too, where you've got a black belt on the mat, who's a superior athlete to anybody else, and he'll roll with 15 different guys, all ages, all belt levels, and every roll will kind of look like a competitive roll. And that's a skill that, man, that makes a great training partner.
Yep. Best people in the world to roll with can be able to do that. Those are my favorite people.
Yeah, I agree. Those are always fun rolls, and anybody could roll with that person and have fun. From new person to experience, and that's great people to have around.
Yep, I'm going to give a shout out here real quick, and Byron knows who I'm talking about, but I've rolled with him a couple times. He's one of Byron's main training partners, but Cody Carrillo is that guy. I mean, you roll with him, and There's no egos. You're just trying everything. No pressure, no jaw choking. It's a fun, competitive role that you don't have any injuries coming out, and you're just smiling from ear to ear the whole time.
Yeah, and he will roll with a black belt like that, and he will roll with a white belt like that. Everyone's getting a good roll every time when you roll with Cody. And
this is coming from a Bellator fighter, an incredible athlete. And you think, you watch him in the cage there, and you're like, oh, this guy's vicious. You get on the mat with him, and man, he's just a technical machine that you just have so much fun rolling with him.
Yeah, I always think when I think of him, I think he's a martial artist. He wants to learn more and get better and develop his skill and craft.
Yeah, that's a great way to explain him.
Well, I'll get on to my off-the-mat lessons.
Or we could just call the show there.
It's been fun, guys.
Yeah, our scheduled time to end this has elapsed. No, but we should, honest feedback, we should pin down the time more. And as far as the weekend goes, we typically record on a Saturday or Sunday. It's a lot of times Sunday morning, but it's nothing consistent. And I think that's just the way it is because we do have schedules that rotate. Trying to get 3 guys to match up their schedules is difficult, but I think that we're all pretty open. Sometimes we get it's helpful to have negative guys like I can't do Saturday. Perfect. It's going to be Sunday. Yeah. I can't do this weekend at all.
Hey Gary, how many times do you think Byron messages us and says, "You guys free to record this weekend?" And he's working one of those 2 days. What he really means is, "Are you free Saturday?" Or
I should say that. Well, if you guys do it without me, that's fine.
It is crazy schedules though between all of us, and I'm much easier right now just because with basketball being canceled. Because you guys know, it seems like I have 3 games every freaking day on a weekend.
That's true.
That's for sure.
I hadn't thought about that. So I need to recruit one of you guys to be a training firefighter, and I'll walk you through a process, and we'll take some off-the-mat lessons from that. So
I want this to be Gary. I want it to be Gary.
Gary, you've been signed up.
Cool. I don't know if I can pass the academy.
Gary, we're just talking about driving, and this is the first really driving position that we have on the Wichita Fire Department. You're going to be driving what we call and so names of fire. So anybody that's a firefighter that's listening to this, names of fire apparatus throughout the country or world are often different. And so here in Wichita we call it a squad. It's basically like a big pickup that we use for fighting grass fires and brush fires, and it goes to a lot of medical calls. So if there's a squad in a ladder truck or a squad in an engine at the firehouse and a call comes out for chest pains, the squad goes. And the engine or ladder or whatever else stays available for potentially a fire or the next medical call that comes out. So very busy trucks. And we run them all the time. But anyway, so Gary, you're going to learn how to drive that today. And Sweet. There's definitely an aspect to learning how to drive trucks that are bigger than most vehicles. It's nice to start you on the squad because it's not that big. There are people that have personal trucks that are bigger than this thing. It does carry a lot of water, so it's pretty heavy. But so you'll learn that. We'll drive you through some cones. We'll get you some comfortable, get some miles on the streets, and that sort of thing. So the driving part of it isn't super hard on everyday traffic. So I'd imagine you'd master that within the afternoon. You would figure out how to not hit curbs all the time and that sort of thing. But when I was a rookie, and I've been a firefighter since 2008, I got to be driving one of these trucks, and it came time to drive. We'll say drive hot or emergency traffic, or with the lights and sirens on, we'll say hot. It'll be easy. We'll stick with that throughout this story, or not really a story, but situation, this training class. So when it's time to drive hot, I was just really not taught anything as far as here's how you turn the lights on and you're going to drive hot. And as far as I need to approach the intersection and I need to manage that in a safe way, and I didn't know. And I was fortunate to not have any accidents. I've never had an accident my entire career. Hopefully this airs, that still remains true. I feel like I'm jinxing myself on that one. But anyway, so Gary, when you approach an intersection and you're driving with your lights and sirens on, you have to assume that not everybody can hear. Because
What?
yeah, exactly right. You don't have to have the ability to hear to drive. So some people are deaf, and in the course of a career, they will hit you because they don't hear your sirens. So always assume that people don't hear you, and just make that benefit of the doubt a thing. Now, over the years, I've talked to other drivers. I've learned and I've studied how to drive safely at driving emergency traffic, and then so. Intersections are notoriously a dangerous spot to approach. So, Gary, when you approach the intersection, you're going to have 3 or 4 lanes of traffic. You'll have some people turning left, you'll have some people going straight, some people turning right, and you're going to approach that, and you're going to try to pass everybody to their left. Okay? Pretty simple, right? As you do this, you're going to actually approach the intersection. Let's say the light's red. We're going to go through this red light. We're not going to wait for it to change, obviously. I need you to focus what you're doing to your left, because the cars that are going to hit you first, although nobody's going to hit you if we do this just right, the cars that are going to hit you first will be the ones from the left, because as you come out in traffic, the left-hand lane, and here in the U.S., we drive on the right-hand side of the road, so people driving... Man, I can make this really confusing by trying to explain left and right. But so the first lane of traffic that will be able to hit you will be to your left. Does that make sense, Gary?
Yes.
Okay. The reason why I wanted to do this to one of you is if something doesn't make sense, ask me as a student and we'll go back. Because I've had this conversation dozens of times with people. So you want to control each lane. And as you control that first lane, which is usually a right-hand turn lane, they'll stop. And there's a second lane or third lane, people who are wanting probably to go straight. You need to make sure that those cars are stopped. If the car in the third lane wants to drive up to the intersection and then stop, you have to wait for that to happen. You can't assume they see or hear you. Okay, and then of course you have the people who are turning left. They wait. They get like an arrow or whatever. You need them to stop as well. Once all of the lanes of traffic have stopped that are to your left, then you could start, and it's not like you just stare out to your left. You're looking both, but that's your priority. Now you want to do the same thing to the right. But the benefit of what you've done, because the way I originally did this, and I just had to make it up, is I would just stop way back, kind of behind the crosswalk, and let the intersection shut itself down. Now we're going to start inching our way out there. As each lane is controlled, we can go with that lane, we can go to the next lane. People will see you. You're out, you're making yourself present, you're being seen. It's a lot easier. By the time it comes time to control this stuff to the right-hand side, you're already halfway in the intersection. You're pretty prominent presence. You're big, you're red, you're making a lot of noise, your lights are going. And so those lanes will shut down a lot quicker if they haven't already. So clear those, and we'll proceed in the direction we want to go. Pretty simple. It's just a bit of a system, though. And it takes some time to get used to because we're not used to running lights. Gary, I imagine the amount of red lights you've run has probably been minimal or accidental. So the whole thing is when I started driving a fire truck, it was chaotic to me to approach the intersection, to figure out how to do it safely, get through it. And now, and as a department, we've made a lot of great changes. But when I work with a rookie, I give them a system, like I just handed you, Gary, to get through this intersection safely, controlled, to account for whatever percent of people don't hear you. To do this safely, because most accidents happen either backing up intersections. Those are two very dangerous spots. Backing up's not dangerous, but it's accident prone. Anyway, so now you have a system. And same thing with jiu-jitsu. It seems chaotic when you're brand new at jiu-jitsu. There's about 1 million positions. They all are something different. Nothing makes sense. I'm getting choked. My arm's getting twisted. I don't understand what's going on. This isn't the same mount that the other guy did. This is a totally different mount. It's confusing me. As you learn a system to deal with different positions and to bring it back to the jiu-jitsu that you're comfortable with. So if Gary wants to play half guard, how many ways does Gary have to get to half guard? he's got a lot of ways. He's getting it back in his system. It's less confusing. So as the system is given to you and you're working with it and you're driving through the red lights, you have a system to shut this intersection down safely and move on. It's not confusing. It's not chaotic. It's very good. And I like just to think of it as developing systems for your jiu-jitsu. Are you ready to run some red lights, Gary?
Yes. See, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a big old push bar on the front, and I'm just going to crank the lights as loud as I can and the siren, and I'm going to go through that thing aggressively.
What's going to happen is you're going to get T-boned.
It doesn't matter. I'll keep running.
You need the you need the ability to not get hit from the side. No, but I do tell. So another discussion, and this isn't part of my off the mat lessons, but driving a big truck, if you hit somebody, there's a good chance you're going to seriously injure or kill somebody. Like a big truck coming through, hitting a small car or a motorcycle or a bike or whatever, like those are disasters. And so it's different than just being in a normal accident. When you put a fire truck in there, it's a bad accident. And so I try to stress
that. Have you ever thought about hovercraft?
I haven't ever worked on that, Gary.
That might be a good idea, and you wouldn't even have to worry about traffic.
Well, at this point, Gary's one of them firefighters that just doesn't have the right attitude. And I'm trying to get him off my ship, right, Joe?
Right.
Like
I'm a supervisor.
So I don't know if I've explained this many times to many firefighters, but we've been driving around. We've had examples visual. Did that make sense, Joe?
It did make sense. And one way that I would drag this back into the jiu-jitsu realm is if you're new to jiu-jitsu, if you're just thinking about going, you don't know what to expect, you probably know somebody else that's already going. Maybe that's part of the reason you're interested. Ask them a ton of questions. Go on the internet, look at some technique videos. The more information you have going into a situation, the easier it's going to be for you to navigate your way through that. I would add, though, that I think part of what you're getting at, Byron, with the chaos of those situations where things are happening quick, a lot of things happening all at once, that to an extent the only way to get through that is just to continue to put yourself in that situation. So getting a lot of information beforehand will make the first encounter easier, but it's still going to seem to be quick and chaotic the first couple of times. But as you get more time in that situation, things will start to slow down.
I love that point, Joe. Put yourself in that situation. You get more comfortable with it. And like you said, things start slowing down. You're seeing everything better as it comes towards you.
Okay, let's move on to the next lesson in this, gentlemen, as you put your gear on and we head to this next call, is we don't drive the same to all emergencies. That may or may not seem intuitive to you. So I think the fastest I've ever driven to an alarm is we've got it's a drowning call. It came out a few years ago, and it happened a few. I tried not to use like slang. It happened a few years ago, and we're reading on the computer, and dispatch is telling us it's a kid. He's in the water. His head's going in the water. He's going underneath the water. He's coming back up. He's in a pond. All of these things are like seconds are super critical. Like, this kid's going to drown. This kid's going to drown in a pond, and he's going to be super hard to find. This is terrible. He's 2.5 miles from the station. I drove as fast as I could. Now, it didn't hit anything, and it was there were no accidents, but I was pushing it. If I drove like that to every call, I'm sure I would have a few accidents under my belt or under my suspenders. You can't do that. And so we drive pretty darn fast to fires. When you read, there's a fire and, this is happening, whatever, we drive, that's pretty much this as fast as we go. Slightly faster, if I could, I don't know, to this kid that was drowning. Now the kid lived. We got in the water, we got him. But it was seconds were important. So that's different than going to a call where there's chest pains, which is an emergency. We'll drive with the lights and sirens on. We're not driving as fast as a fire where 2 minutes means one room is burned up, and 3 minutes is the room and the hallway's burned up, and 4 minutes is basically the house is going to burn. They're different. heart attack, we need to get there quickly, or chest pains, we need to get there quickly, but also safely. There's a balance there. We need to gauge that. Compared to something like an injury, somebody has a cut on their hand that maybe they lost a finger. Ultimately, that's not life-threatening. We're going to get there pretty quick. Now, some things are somebody fell down and they need help getting back up. We're going to adjust our speed there. We may not even drive fast to that. We're within a few miles, and we'll be there in a couple minutes. So we just need to judge the appropriate level of speed that we're going to approach the get to the scene with. Some guys have a hard time doing that. If Gary, you're driving me, and we're going to go pick up somebody who fell out of bed, and you're driving like the house is on fire, we're going to have a problem. I need to communicate, like Joe was saying, with you. Say, Gary, slow down. We're just going to pick somebody up when we get there. This isn't, this doesn't warrant that sort of speed, putting everyone in danger, including ourselves. We need to get there super safe. Like, it's not justified to drive that fast. So I think just the appropriate level of speed is something that sometimes needs to be addressed with some firefighters. They just want to drive crazy, fast, all the time. Not appropriate. That being said, I'm not going to roll super hard with everybody I roll with. I need to adjust that level. If I'm rolling with somebody who is really tired, let's say somebody's doing like a marathon jiu-jitsu roll, they've rolled for 7 hours straight, they're going to go to 10. I'm not going to roll super hard with that person. That's just, honestly, that's just rude. I'm going to make sure that they're doing okay. We're going to have some interesting interactions back and forth maybe, but that's not the person you go roll hard with. If somebody's brand new and struggling with understanding what they're trying to do, I'm not going to roll hard with that person. If somebody is a solid purple belt and giving me a hard time, I'm going to pick it up. If somebody is an old buddy I haven't trained with for 2 years, a black belt, we're probably going to roll pretty hard. There's just ways to gauge and level up or down, like Joe was talking about earlier today, your level of training. Same thing with driving different speeds to calls.
Byron, I like that, and I like the way you focus on, on the team, and if you're rolling with somebody that's not looking for that kind of role, you don't roll like that. But I would also say for your own training and your own safety, your own development, you might be a 25-year-old purple belt who's rolling with a bunch of other 25 and 28-year-old purple belts. And if you want to go 95, 98% every roll, you'll find training partners that'll do that. But is that what's best for you in the long run? If you're competitive, you need to taper off sometimes a little bit before a competition, or if you get an injury, you need to be able to taper off. So even just for your own safety and your own development, I think you need to be able to regulate your training intensity.
Good point, Joe. I like that, and I think that's valuable advice for the people who oftentimes need it the most, as far as being able to train hard a lot. But you need to be able to look at it long term. So, Gary, are you good on how fast you should be driving to certain alarms? And if you need help, I will help you on that.
Yep, fast as possible to get there.
Okay.
I told you I'm offensive.
Yes, highly.
You are offensive.
Okay, guys, I'll wash my shirt before we roll.
Thank you.
Wash my rash guard.
And also, don't leave it in a zipped up bag for a week before you wash it. Okay, the next element. So we'll do 3 things. So there's a lot of different things about driving fire apparatus that we could talk about, but I've kind of picked three of them that seem to be pretty big. The next one here, Gary, is the truck you're driving. If we go to a house fire, we're not going to use the truck itself. So it's basically just moving us to the fire.
Moving passengers.
It's what?
Moving people.
Yeah, it's just a people mover. It's just because we're on that truck, our gear's on that truck. It's not a ladder truck. It's not going to bring a whole bunch of ladders and equipment, no saws that we're going to be using. It's not an engine where the pump needs to be a reasonable distance that we could pull line off and pump. We don't need to park by a hydrant. We don't want to park by a hydrant. And so parking is a pretty big deal driving these trucks. And being a rookie, the good thing about this parking is you just need to not screw it up. You just need to not park in a bad spot. And so at this point, once we've driven through some cones and some practice, we've talked about how fast to drive, we talked about how to get through intersections, we're going to have to definitely talk about how to park at a house fire. And some of the things we talk about is I live in a pretty diverse area as far as different houses. Some houses are big, some houses are very small. Some neighborhoods are very tight, and some neighbors have, acres and acres for land. These things matter when it comes to parking this truck at a fire scene. So a lot of times, this truck will, like I said, it's just basically like a big pickup, will end up, a good parking spot will be in a neighbor's driveway. Now, so Gary, we're going to drive around for an afternoon, and we're going to look at driveways. We're going to say, this house over here, this blue one, that's on fire. Where are you going to park? And you're going to drive up to it, and you're going to say, I'm going to drive past it. Driving past it is a very nice thing because it lets you see 3 sides of the house, and you maybe see fire on one side, and then you drive past it. Oh, there's fire on both sides of this thing. Like, that's a big deal to know that. And so we try to pull past the house, and so Gary will be doing that. But, which driveway you pick? Maybe the neighbor's driveway. That's where the chief a lot of times will pull in with his truck, and he'll get to see the fire and command it from his pickup. That's great. So maybe across the street, the neighbor's house. So you say that one right there is where I park. Perfect, Gary. And so we go to another house. How about this house? Where would you park in this one? And I'm not a big fan of parking in driveways that are narrow. I like in Wichita, a lot of our driveways, we have double garages, and we have a driveway that's 2 cars wide. Those are super easy to park a fire truck. So, Gary, you're going to be driving. You're going to be amped up. You're just going to have driven past a house that has fire shooting out of it. I don't need you hitting a mailbox. I don't want you to hit another car. I don't want you to hit anything. So I prefer that the driveway be double wide, double the width of a car, and also have no mailbox. But sometimes the mailbox is okay. So the bad driveways are the ones that are just 1 car length or width wide and have a mailbox. Those are probably pretty bad. So at that point, we'll probably go down the street in another house and just park it off to the side of the road. And so what we're going to do, Gary, we're going to go spend an afternoon, go to 10, 15, 20 houses, depends how we're doing. And you're going to pick a house for me, and then I'll drive and say, I'm going to park right here and tell you where I'm going to park. And then I'll pick one for you, and I'll say, well, actually, that was a great spot. Or maybe you need a little bit of work. That's probably where the chief would go. And we'll kind of just plan out how we're going to do this. One big complaint about squad drivers, is that's what this is called, this squad, this pickup, is they park in a bad spot and they kind of ruin the scene. If you park in the spot that the ladder truck wants to go, he parks in the spot that the engine wants to go, and nobody's happy. And it's all because of a thing that just moved 2 people there parked in a bad spot. It's not what you want to do. You don't want to block the lane. So we need to have another truck come through here and lay down some hose. And if you park in a way that clogs traffic, that's also bad. There's only bad things really with nobody says great job parking. They just say, well, that one messed up the scene. So we'll train on this, Gary, and I'll get to where you make good decisions every time. They may not be the same decision I'd make about where to park, but it's a good decision. Then the next thing is, and I do this, this is one of my stronger suits as far as helping run this truck, is when we're going to a fire, I will tell them. So after we do this training, Gary, I'll say, I'm going to prompt you that parking spot is important, but I'm not going to tell you where to park. You know where to park. We've trained on this. You'll figure it out when you get there. I have other things I'm doing. So I'm basically outsourcing where you're going to park this truck when we get there. That takes it off my plate. But I will prompt you and remind you about a mile or half mile out where you park is important. Because what guys do is they forget. They see those flames. They see people standing in the yard yelling at them. They just park. They pull over and put it in the park. It's a bad spot. So I just give them that little prompt. And I'm responsible for this truck ends up. But it's nice to have somebody who's fully trained and able to do it. So that's it. So as we're coming into this house, the fire, see smoke, maybe 2 miles out, there's smoke coming up. Man, this is going to be a big fire. So before we turn the corner to the neighborhood, hey, Gary, remember, where you park's important, and you're gonna know where to go. And that's it. That's all you get from me, unless you have a question, but we don't have time to be figuring out math questions here. We got to go to work. So every time that has worked great. The people know how to park and do a good job. And I'm reminded of after ADCC, I got to interview John Danaher briefly and ask him about his coaching because I was really interested in his coaching methods. He's very calm. He sits off to the side and he just tells observations really to the athlete. Hey, look at the leg or heads up on this. Nothing. He's not a cheerleader, not doing anything like that. And he's really just pointing things out so they are prompted. And that's all that I'm wanting to do there. I just want to prompt you about this important thing before we actually get to do some work. That's it. As jiu-jitsu coaches, a lot of times we're a second set of eyes off to the side that is watching a match in a third-person perspective. Maybe we see things that the athlete doesn't see. Maybe we need to remind them. Maybe they're a bit flustered, their adrenaline's going too much. Remind them, hey, start working your half guard game. Start working for a sweep. You're down 2 points. Just some outside help. That's all they need to get their game going. So that's what I got on that. And I don't know. I really enjoyed talking to John Danaher about coaching, and him, he's just like, I just prompt them and give them some observations. I don't really know what's happening out there. I can't feel it. I don't know if they're in pain or if they've been injured or whatever. I'm just helping feed information. And that's in that situation, I'm just giving them a prompt. Where you park is a big deal. You know what to do. When we get there, do it. So, Gary, where are you going to park?
Well, it kind of goes back to like Joe was talking about earlier, off of your observation. But you're doing a bunch of test runs. You're training. You're during the middle of your shift, you're getting in that truck and you're driving around neighborhoods and practicing. So when it does become time for a real fire, for a real emergency, you're going to be prepared. You've been down that road before. You're going to be more, you're going to see things, as Joe said, a little bit slower, be able to react quicker. But hey, I do have a question, Byron. Byron and I, we train with a lot of firefighters and police officers. And I have heard police officers getting on you firefighters for the way you guys park at a scene that probably has both police and fire trucks. Like, do you guys ever work together on that? Like where to park? Do you guys talk to each other? Because I know I've heard that come up 3 or 4 times, when we're training between cops and firefighters talking. And it always seems like the cops are talking about the way the firefighters park.
Yeah, I don't. So the scenes I was talking about today about, a house fire, that sort of thing, sometimes a police officer will stumble upon that. In the middle of the night, they're out driving around, no one's around. Oh, there's a house on fire. Okay, don't park in front of the house. Like, get the address, try to get everybody out, call 911, whatever, but you're going to have to move your car out of the way. Don't park by a hydrant.
But do you guys talk to police officers
a little
about
bit?
That?
So
okay.
The more common situation that we interact with in a parking situation is at car accidents.
Yeah.
So our bigger vehicles do a better job of blocking traffic. It's always a nightmare situation where you're on the scene and somebody just comes plowing through on their phone or drunk, and here we are, we're out of our vehicles, and that could happen. It's never happened to me so far. I've been at a few scenes where there have been additional accidents, but our bigger trucks are better at blocking just because they have a lot of mass. So if you want to slam into that with your small car, it's not going to move and kill everybody who's been involved in the accident. But a cop car is smaller, and it will get pushed further. So we prefer to block with our bigger trucks. But eventually, we're going to have to go, and they're going to have to – every city is different. But we take care of the patients, we secure the vehicles, we take care of that sort of thing. But ultimately, we leave the scene with the police officers who write tickets and call the tow truck and that sort of thing. That's their category. And if it's seems like a safe environment, it's not on some big highway, it's pretty, it's maybe an easier road to control safely. I always talk with, hey, you guys good with us going, or do you want us to park behind you, or what do you want us to do? And most of the time, they're good. Hey, I feel good about this. I'm fine. I got a few cones up, and I got my car back, 50 feet or so, whatever it is. But yeah, I always ask them if they're good with us leaving the scene, because we do have a better way to protect the people working at the scene, because we just have more mass. Perfect. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely makes sense.
Other things are, if, like, let's say there's a shooting, the cops will park. They like to roll in together. Yeah. They don't want to be by yourself.
Yeah, and you guys are going to hide behind them, so you'll come in later.
Yeah, but we do need to eventually get in there I don't have a gun on me at work, but we eventually need to get in there and take care of a person who's been shot.
Well, Byron, I've I've seen your arms. Some people would call those guns.
Yeah, maybe one or two. Yeah, Gary, you're basically lying to everybody at that point. Yeah. So there's just different modes of. It depends on the calls. And the difficult thing about driving a cop car, which I've never done, but they go super fast. So the truck you're driving, Gary, on this little made up scenario thing, it has 400 gallons of water on it. It goes kind of slow. It's not the most agile piece of equipment. It's one of the quicker ones we have, but you put a new cop behind the wheel of a cop car, they can do 130, and that's hard to control that. And it goes again to, is it appropriate to go that fast for this type of a call? Maybe. Depends on the call. Depends on the time of day. Did school just get out? There's a whole bunch of variables that come into play. It takes time to get used to those and to make the good decisions. So, yeah, I can go on, but I think this has been a long enough episode.
You've only been going on for about an hour there, Byron.
I'm sorry, guys. I should have just picked one or two examples, but I get excited. I really have a couple passions, and one of them is jiu-jitsu. Another one is firefighting, and it's the same thing. If we're doing a fire thing and someone's talking about jiu-jitsu, I would probably go on and on about jiu-jitsu. I'm passionate about it.
That's good. It shows. Like you said, I was thinking when you were talking about it, I would like to be a rookie at your squad. I feel like I'd be probably treated better and get more training if I was on the same shift as you.
I would try, Gary, but you're so ornery, man. Oh, we get along great.
Yeah.
Anyway, I want to briefly review next week. We have Justin Rader. Gary,
Yes.
I know you're excited about that. You want to say anything nice about Justin before next week? What do they expect next week?
You want to talk about, Byron was just talking about passion. This guy has passion galore. If you ever don't feel like training, just listen to him talk and you will feel like training. Just an incredible martial artist.
Yeah, so happy to have him back on the show. I've already recorded the interview. He did awesome, and I'm excited to bring that to you guys. So, that's next week. We'll skip the article this week because I guess Gary and Joe did the notes, and it's already been an hour plus, hour and a half plus.
Yeah, we had it out there, but you.
I haven't read it, guys.
Hey, how'd you like my quote? I just pulled a quote out of nowhere to make it look like Joe and I did something.
That was awesome, man.
I'm impressed, Gary.
Thank you.
That's years of podcasting experience
and
coming through.
Joe just starts recording the start of it, before, He just runs with it. Yeah, I was proud of Joe.
It all pieced together. Who'd have thought doing this thing for hundreds of times would make it easier?
361 times.
That's true. All right. Well, until next time, stay sweaty, my friends.
And don't forget to drive properly to the fire.
Train hard, train smart, and get better, guys. We'll see you on the mats.
I was like, what the heck is that? That's pretty good.
Nice,
Joe. All right, come back, y'all.
Thank you for listening. I hope you find the time today to roll. After all, the best way to get better at Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is to do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. You can visit our website at BjjBrick.com for more good times. Swing by and like our Facebook page. Our email is bjjbrick@gmail.com.